Hey guys, welcome to Book Review 171. Today I am going to be reviewing A Land of Two Halves. After 15 years in New Zealand, Joe Bennett asked himself where on earth he was, by the aforementioned Joe Bennett. So, as the sheep on the cover page would suggest, this is a book about New Zealand. It's about a someone that lived in England and then immigrated to New Zealand 15 years before this book was written, and mostly lived sort of a domesticated life. He kind of bookends the book by talking about his dog and kind of a little bit about very shortly about his domestic life, but decides he needs to go out and see what this New Zealand that people are always talking about is. Because what is necessarily seen in kind of the portrayal of New Zealand isn't necessarily the real New Zealand. Now, he does this in a pretty incredible way. He does it by hitchhiking, which I think really gives him a good cross balance, much like other hitchhiking books that I've read. A good cross balance of the various parts of society. You know, everyone from the rich BMW driver, which he actually has a BMW driver pick him up, which he says is very rare, to the much more common sort of dilapidated Ute or dilapidated, like old Toyota or something like that, that people are kind of getting the last few miles of as they travel around New Zealand on the cheap, these people being much more likely to pick him up. Now, he said that the hardest one to pick him up was, geez, my collar's all messed up. Actually, I like it up a little more. Was caravans. They tended to have sort of older retired couples, and he would particularly mention the sort of horror in these people's faces when they would see a hitchhiker, as if every hitchhiker out there is a axe-wielding, mass murderer, which is clearly not the case, and which, when I hitchhike, it's fun to, see all the varying people. What else? I guess talks about the Maori. They tend to be pretty good at picking people up. I guess the one thing I did want to mention is the irony of older people not picking them up is Joe Bennett, I think, is pushing like upper 40s or lower 50s. So he's not quite in old age, but he's certainly not some young buck that, you would see, which kind of makes him atypical for hitchhiking around New Zealand. Let's see. Oh, geez. We got this whole section of the South Island that he travels around. So he starts off in Christchurch. That's his hometown. He describes it as very English. Goes on to multiple small towns that are sort of like one pub stops. He mentions kind of just a lot of the local character and flavor of these people, be it the sort of hot girl that's working as a waitress until she turns of legal age, or I guess just gets her big break and gathers up enough money to move to like Christchurch or Wellington, or even Auckland, or even across the Tasman Sea to Australia, or also to Europe or North America. Something in New Zealand's psychosis is a continual feeling of sort of being the low man on the totem pole, feeling of inferiority. Now, that feeling isn't necessarily justified, but I think it just comes from being such a small island country, particularly that's so isolated from the rest of the world. And to a degree, they should feel a little bit of trepidation because brain drain is a real thing. People do move out of New Zealand for the better opportunities in the big smokes. Now, that's not to say that there isn't value there. It's just outside of Auckland, there isn't really any metropolises in New Zealand. And even Auckland's pretty small for a metropolis, even though it's supernova for what the rest of New Zealand is. But he travels to Geraldton, travels down south, some of the east coast of the South Island, including Dunedin, which is kind of an old stuffy city. He talks a lot about kind of the catchphrases of these various cities and how just awful they are. Somebody's out there. How awful they are. I think Dundon is like the you'll want to come here twice. I think I made that up, but it's along those lines where it's just terrible. He also talks about the horrible city buildings that are built, particularly like governmental city buildings, like municipal buildings, that they tend to be kind of blockish and garish compared to sort of some of the older, more natural buildings in the cities, particularly the newer sort of municipal halls and things like that. He gets out into the countryside near Owaka in Belkutha. That's where he tried to take the scenic route, but there was just nobody going down that direction on the hitchhike. So he decided to take the freeway, which he laments about. He laments quite a or laments, I think I'm saying that wrong, laments quite a bit in this book about the various aspects of New Zealand. It's a pretty sarcastic character. And kind of a bit of a droll, I think I'm using that term correctly. He has a droll sense of humor, I guess I should say. In that, I think he does see beauty in things, but particularly with like main tourist sites, he's very cynical of. He's very cynical of easy opinion. He sees beauty in things like sitting by the side of the road, like throwing rocks at like a worm or something like that, or just kind of biding his time by the side. And it's really he says it's the freedom of the unexpected. It's the joy of the unexpected. It's not like what he calls like prepackaged fun or prepackaged adventure or prepackaged thrills that you get from a lot of these areas. They give the impression that you're in danger, but actually, bungee jumping or going on some of these speedboats or things like that, while they're fun, they're exactly what you expect them to be. And with that sort of cynical mindset, you realize that it's just kind of being a product being sold to you, just like tape or toilet paper or something like that. It's just a product for to force excitement upon you. And in a way, it is exciting, but he likes sort of the spontaneity of the moment more. Next, he goes up to Te Anau. This is the big lake that's on the very edge of Fiordland National Park. I do not believe that he goes into Fiordland National Park. Well, I guess you couldn't really, because there's not really hitchhiking. There's a few roads through there, but it would just be impossible to hitchhike. You could definitely tramp or hike through there, but no such luck. He talks about just how dwarfed Te Anau. I really want to see this place because how dwarfed it is by the lake. And on one side of the lake, it's sort of like pasture land and kind of flat, and that's the side that Te Anau is on, and it's on the lake. But when you look over the lake, there's these huge, majestic mountains that go into Fiordland National Park. And unlike Queensland, because the side of the lake Te Anau is on, it doesn't exactly feel like a tourist destination. It feels more just sort of like naturally everything's coming in. Whereas his next spot he goes to is Queensland, which I have been to. Hold on a second. Hey.